Welcome back to another fun-filled edition of Undercover Lies, the site that brands Donald J. Trump and the rest of the January 6th insurrectionists as traitors, especially the senators and congressmen involved who should have known better but apparently didn't, so they also turned traitor. Today we are going to tell you the story of how a reporter named Jamal Khashoggi was tortured, beaten, killed, and finally dismembered at the Saudi embassy in Istanbul, Turkey, on October 2nd, 2018, on the orders of the new king, Muhammed Bin Salman, known as MBS among those close to him, apparently, and probably by the Trumps who love to feel close to monsters. We'll relate Mr. Khashoggi's story in our next section, but first, let's get to this edition's Week of Woe. Today starring Mr. Trump and the attempt to pardon people involved on the January 6th insurrection, but we're thinking of the pardons prior to the January 6th insurrection. How queer is that? Also starring in a supporting role, Rudy Giuliani, and finally bringing up the rear, Madison Cawthorn continues to piss off the GOP. So first up is Trump and his pardons. Why in the world would he be discussing pardons if they didn't foresee the actions and illegalities that would happen on January 6th? If they all say that the insurrection was just a walk in the park, only an overwhelming love per the ex-guy, and a tour of the Capitol, as others have said. But then why the pardons? Well, let me tell you why. They were discussing pardons prior to insurrection because they knew they were attempting a coup and also knew it could get violent. Then they blame Antifa and BLM, not Trump supporters, MAGA, Oath Keepers, and other violent white supremacy groups. No, they try to shift the blame on someone else. But again, why were they discussing the pardons if they actually thought nothing was going to happen? But then Republicans will always try and shift the blame when they know that it was actually the white supremacist groups, the Oath Keepers, and other groups such as that were causing most of the problems on January 6th. But they try to blame it on somebody else, and that's the Republican way. These are Trump's people. So now we hear that Donald J. Trump and his cronies and fellow insurrectionists committed several crimes. The most likely to get any jail time would be the charge of insurrection, which they all deserve, especially the ex-guy who initiated, planned, and paid for the insurrection, and coordinating all attacks on liberty from the Willard Hotel as a base of operations. Trump, of course, is well known for being tight-fisted with his money and not paying for anything if he can help it. Construction, legal work, anything, he does not pay for it. But in this instance, the idiot had then paid from his campaign funds. So the one he does pay, he incriminates himself, but Merrick Garland still has not charged them or even laid the groundwork yet. But maybe the Department of Justice's refusal to hand over documents to the January 6th committee might signal that they are investigating Trump. Come on, Merrick, do your job. Get her done. Next up, Rudy the Giuliani reneges on his duty to appear before the January 6th committee and may face some jail time. That would be great. Giuliani had been negotiating with the committee to appear and discuss the January 6th insurrection and what was happening prior to that day, but again decided at the last minute not to make an appearance before the committee as he had promised because they did not let him film the entire event.
Giuliani's attorney says the January 6th committee rejected his request to record the interview.
Of course, Rudy is one of the pushers of the big lie and one of Trump's most ardent supporters. But will Rudy go to jail for Trump? That, my friends, is yet to be seen. Finally, Madison Cawthorn is back in the news this past week for taking a pistol to the airport. This is not the only time that Mr. Cawthorn was caught with taking a gun to an airport. 9 months earlier, he got stopped at the North Carolina airport for the same crime. But of course, the punishment, if any, is not known. Also this week, Cawthorn was caught in a disgusting video with his cousin, wherein Cawthorn was shown wearing women's clothes. In the video, Cawthorn is seen and heard talking sex with his cousin, who is also a member of Cawthorn's staff, who asked the question, is Cawthorn shooting his cuz from North Carolina? I don't know. I don't doubt the veracity of the story. When will the GOP give up on this lost cause of a congressman?
Probably the biggest headline maybe this morning in North Carolina is the 11th district got so much attention because of the annex of first-term Congressman Madison Cawthorn. He's faced scandal after scandal recently, so he lost that deep red district despite being endorsed by Trump.
Freshman Congressman Madison Cawthorn has conceded. That is the breaking news that we're following right now.
So that's it for this edition's Week of Woe. Join us again next week where we'll detail another week of woe for these idiots. Right now, let's get into this week's segment where we talk about Muhammed Bin Salman, who rules Saudi Arabia with an iron fist. Muhammed Bin Salman, who I'll call MBS, has been called many things. Prince, he's rich. Now he's called King of Saudi Arabia. But now hear another voice, that of ex-Saudi Minister Saad al-Jabri, who says that MBS is a psychopath killer who feels no empathy, feels no emotion, and he doesn't learn from experience. And he has witnessed MBS doing or committing atrocities. Jabri, who was employed by Mohammed bin Jayaf, who was heir apparent until his arrest by MBS in 2017. At this point, MBS's father was king, but in name only because MBS had taken the reins from him and now is the de facto king of Saudi Arabia. But before we get into what this murder has become, let's see what he was like prior to taking over the reins of Saudi Arabia. MBS, or Muhammad bin Salman al-Saud, was born on 31 August 1985. He was the seventh son of King Salman bin Abdulaziz. Sorry, I hope I didn't tear that up too much. And the eldest of 6 sons born to the king's third wife. Being one of over 150 of the king's sons, he would have had to have showed the king something special to outshine his brothers and become king. From an early pre-teen age, MBS would always be with his father and became very powerful through the manifestations of the king. The king even removed his nephew Mohammed bin Jayaf from the position of crown prince and installed MBS in his place. Being a Saudi crown prince and de facto king of the country, MBS also holds the offices of Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of the Defense of Saudi Arabia, Chairman of the Council of Economic and Developmental Affairs, and is also the Chairman of the Council of Political and Security Affairs. Damn, I get tired just naming all the jobs the guy holds. But if you want to be an authoritarian regime, you have to handle all the very important positions yourself. MBS runs a country that has billions, if not trillions of dollars in assets made from oil profits. So MBS has a vast amount of wealth that he also controls. With this money, he could buy many things. As ruler of Saudi Arabia, he could make many changes to ensure the women of Saudi Arabia are treated equal to the males of his country. Does MBS do any of these things? Nope. But what he does with his wealth and power is to entice a reporter named Jamal Khashoggi into the Saudi Arabian embassy in Istanbul, Turkey, on October 2nd, 2018, where MBS had him killed and dismembered, put into recently purchased suitcases, and he made Mr. Khashoggi disappear without a trace as to where he is now. Mr. Khashoggi was lured to the Saudi Arabian embassy to get paperwork for his upcoming marriage to fiancée Hatice Chenzig. Sorry, I hope I didn't tear that up too much, who waited for him outside the consulate. He never appeared and she never saw her fiancé ever again. But of course, MBS denied having anything to do with the murder of Mr. Khashoggi, but says because he is the head of state in Saudi Arabia, he takes full responsibility for this atrocity, as he says that it should never have happened. But of course it did happen, and several sources, including the CIA, told the ex-guy that MBS did indeed call for and plan the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. But of course, MBS met with Trump and told him that he had nothing to do with the murder, and of course Trump believed him. But why did Trump overrule his own intelligence services and side with MBS? Well, let's see. Maybe it was the $100 billion worth of arms he was going to buy from the United States, or maybe it was his promise to keep the price of oil low. But whatever, that idiot would rather believe a tyrant than his own intelligence services. But, as we said before, this is the kind of person Trump loves, an authoritarian strongman who does what he wants in his country, including murdering his own citizens, and the key being that not only does he kill Saudi Arabian citizens, but he gets away with it. No repercussions at all. The ex-guy said very little in the press against MBS, and by keeping his mouth shut and saying that he believed MBS, Trump kept oil prices down and sold billions of dollars in arms to Saudi Arabia. This sounds like a deal made in hell to me, but to Trump, it was just business. So a reporter who was critical of MBS disappears, and Trump sat with his cabinet and made jokes of Khashoggi's murder, saying that was one tough negotiation. What a jerk. Well guys, that's all the time we have for today. Just remember, when you vote, that Trump wants to be a dictator here in America. If you don't think so or you don't believe us, then you just haven't been paying attention. Anyways, see you next week for another edition of Undercover Lies. Please hit the like button if you like what you hear, and please subscribe. You can also leave us a comment. Please be civil. Until next week, remember, America needs your vote.